Yeah, hi Kathryn. Thank you. Wow, really looking forward to kicking this conference off with you and just couldn't be happier to be here today. My name is Jameel Ghata. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at PAVE, and we're an AI-enabled vehicle inspection company that really makes it easy for anybody, anytime, anywhere to become a skilled inspector. That's a little bit about me and us, and really look forward to kicking the conference off with you, Kathryn.
You bet. And just so you guys all know, Jameel and I hit it off a number of years ago at some other conference, and so he's been a part of our summit for now. I think this is the third one, and I chose him specifically for this because we get into some pretty good dialogue about everything. And so, talking about what's going on today is where we start. And, I think if you look at that chart in the upper right, the commercial vehicles volume, you'll understand what people, or at least folks that I know, always say about this industry is about how stable it is, how stable the growth is. And, I made that comment about 80% of the GDP. It is just there. For example, if housing starts are down, housing repairs go up, right? You need a plumber. You always are going to need a plumber, right, Jameel?
That's right. Yeah,
So,
I think when you think about where commercial vehicle production is today, right? I mean, we're
mhm,
looking at 1.9 million units in 26. And then when you think about the growth, it's not going to be a straight line growth. I mean, you'll see in the chart there is some near-term softness due to tariffs and some supply chain recalibration
mhm.
that'll particularly affect electrification programs. But to your point, it is fairly stable. And in the out years, as you sort of look into 2031, the outlook does call for around 16% growth. So continuing to grow, even though it does look fairly stable.
Right. And I think it's stable in that, when we look at the risk too, it's like the growth may be a little behind or a little earlier, but we know that it's not a category that's going to disappear. One of the things that we look at, of course, you mentioned the EV situation, and of course, we've been tracking alternative fuels for quite a while. I don't know if you knew this, Jameel, but in 2013, I think it was, I wrote the California Alternative Fuel Training Manual. So I've been personally involved in what options there are and how it can grow to help our planet. And it's always been challenging. And you can see in that upper right chart again, you can see the changes that Escalent, who I want to take a minute and thank Escalent for all this great data. They are so good at two parts, at knowing physically what's going on, but also knowing how kind of the attitude towards everything is changing. But you can see that they've predicted that things have changed, right? That with everything that's happened with the new um, rule of order, right? So that's what we expect today. Having said that, we're still looking at having almost 9% on the road, right, by 2030.
Yeah. I mean, I think to your point, Catherine, I mean, hydrogen's promise versus practicality is it really kind of shows up in that chart. Fuel cell electric vehicles, they're still facing bottlenecks, right? Hydrogen availability and storage remain some of the biggest barriers. But to your
Mhm.
point, there is optimism in the R&D, and although near-term volumes remain low, as you look to 2030, 35, you'll see the forecasts call for output doubling from about 3,000 to your point around 8,000 units. It's a small base, but it's still, in my opinion, a meaningful signal of where some of the OEMs are placing their longer term bets.
And isn't that the important thing right now is to really keep pushing in a couple of different areas. We haven't got, there's so many things that aren't there yet, including the batteries for the current style of electric vehicle. There's so many areas that if they keep pushing, and personally, hydrogen has always been one of my most interesting areas. So I keep keeping my fingers crossed. I did have kind of a emotional bet on propane. I'm always been very sad that propane hasn't had a better run. Coming from a farm community, I understand how hard it is to have infrastructure built in rural America. And propane vehicles are very, very low in emission and can work very well in those types of market areas, but they still haven't really taken off. So, we're kind of looking at hydrogen now and saying, is the same sort of thing going to happen there? Or are we going to get enough traction with, like you said, the infrastructure that will help that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality of the situation when you look at the chart at the bottom left is that, ICE is still dominant, right?
Right.
When you look at the internal combustion engines today, they account for roughly 98% of the builds. But, when you look out 10, 11 years into the 2035, 2036 timeframe, that's shrinking to just over half. And that's a large sort of, drawdown, I'll say, of ICE. The predictions are calling for electric powertrains, right, both battery and hybrid, to begin to make up 45%. That's a meaningful figure in these forecasts. So while it's still dominant today, it does call for shrinking in the next decade.
And the ICE hybrid became a much more popular concept over the last year or so. The other one too, we have talked over the last number of years in the summit about what are the three things that really are required for adoption. And I know we didn't cover that in this, but let's just go over it one more time. One is the size of the fleet. It's so much easier for a larger fleet to experiment and to test certain types of new alternative. It's really hard for a small fleet. I mean, if you're a fleet of 10 or 20, it's if to decide to take 10% of that and go try something completely different is a huge cost for you in so many different ways. The other is, of course, geography. Like, where are you? Like, physically, if you are in a far north state, the kinds of challenges of being 100% uptime with electric vehicles is very challenging. And that's why, of course, California and Florida and others, and even Texas, are much more highly adoptive of electric vehicles. And then the third is the actual um, use case, and we saw such an explosion of adoption with the delivery van, who, the use case is they're never going more than 50 miles a day and they're always parking at night to recharge. And that's way different than, a truck that weighs, I don't know, 20,000 pounds and has a crane on it and, has to operate with lots of load. So I think that this prediction is based on improved technologies in a lot of areas to be able to be more efficient in the way that the use case is being performed. So, yeah,
Yeah. The only last thing I'll add there is that um, a lot of the infrastructure requirements assumes public-private infrastructure partnerships
right,
exist into the future. And so without those, I'd say you could consider the adoption curve to flatten out much more quickly.
right.
So I just wanted to add to your points, Kathryn, that I think those public-private infrastructure partnerships are really critical to bringing these alternative powertrains online in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what we've seen in the EV space, that's what started getting some of the momentum going, right? In the commercial space, there's more, um, I think the total cost of ownership for having your own fueling, whatever it is, becomes more possible. We saw that with diesel. We saw that with gasoline. We've seen that with electric. Are we going to see those kinds of bets being placed? And there are some of the big class 8 uh, companies that are experimenting with a number of different alt fuels.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this concept shown, in the upper left of this slide called the messy middle, is really sort of where we are right now, right? That's a term that Escalent is describing where, we're in this phase where you have diesel, natural gas, multiple electric powertrains all sort of coexisting, and different policy swings or infrastructure gaps are really sort of forcing strategy shifts with some of the OEMs, and thus, sort of manifests in how sort of fleets are thinking about hedging rather than committing to a single path.
Yeah.
So it certainly feels like we're going to be in this messy middle, as they call it, for a little while.
And while we're talking about messy, I'll just say I know this slide is really busy, so that's why I wanted everybody to know that our deck is available in the new dock feature. And by the way, when Jameel and I were working on this, all the great data that we got from Escalent was too much. So in our deck, there's also an appendix that has a whole bunch of other slides that provide even deeper view into some of this. So that might be another good reason to download it. Fleet stuff. We both are seeing so much focus now on fleet. It is an area of opportunity to improve significantly. And I think that I found this very fascinating how Escalent looks at scoring fleet tech. So if you look on the left, that's kind of like the list of what they consider to be core fleet tech. So that's data analytics, telematics, BEVs and autonomous. So those are kind of the basics. The emerging would be artificial intelligence drones, which are my favorite. And Jameel and he helped me not get sidetracked on that. And mobility services and blockchain. And so, you see that definition over there. Obviously, the maximum score is 100. It's technically possible. But 50 is where they're saying that technology is entering the mainstream. So you can see that core fleet tech is close to that. And even emerging, I mean, that's a that's a score that is increasing. And if you think about it, we're on that chart, we're getting there, right? So you guys get involved with a lot of fleets.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think, the message that I see in the marketplace is, overall fleet readiness for technology adoption has really improved drastically from 2020 through to 2025. To your point, it's now at almost a 40 index score. So that's significant progress, right? But we're close, but it's not the score of 50, so it's not mainstream yet. I mean, really, from my perspective, some of the core fleet tech that's driving the foundation here, like data analytics, telematics, and other sort of connectivity
Right.
technologies, which I know we'll talk a little bit about later, just seem to be part of almost every fleet strategy conversation,
Mhm.
and really helping from an operational perspective, driving visibility, safety, compliance, and overall more effective management of a fleet, regardless of the size.
I know. I remember when I first learned a little bit. Publishing Ford Pros magazine since 2007 and doing articles early. I'm trying to remember the name of that first telematics company, but I can't. But writing articles about it, I was so excited about this concept that you could use that to help a fleet be more efficient. And I think that was about when there was the discovery about what direction you should always try to turn, right? Always turn right.
Right. Yeah.
And using algorithms to calculate then the route to make sure that, and it's not just about time and efficiency, it's also about safety because there's fewer accidents when you do that. It's also about savings because it's less fuel when you don't have to stop and idle for so long. And then of course, idle became a really big study. And it actually, watching that, it actually created a number of regulations and stuff around idling that drove technology to get better and better. And I think, when you look at the whole journey of one segment, you can see how it also affects the rest of what we're talking about, which is why I like thinking about the industry as a whole. Because what's done in one place is always driving the technology for use in another place.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think the next phase of fleet technologies, I think it's not going to be as much about adding more technology. To me, it's going to be more about integrating it. So, as
Hmm.
you move from these disconnected systems to more unified platforms, you can start to get that, end-to-end visibility um, into your fleet. To me, I think that that is really where the next maybe 2 to 5 years will be focused on it and just bringing it all together to
Yep.
make it easier for folks to manage their fleet.
Well, messy middle might be the theme across all of this, right? Because that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing individual solutions to specific problems that could then, like you say, be integrated or at least viewed from one area that could roll it all up. We're seeing that a lot too. That's one of the projects that Work Truck Solutions is working on in the commercial space for dealerships, is helping them in the office be able to roll up everything that's happening in commercial and have a view over it, with some technology that we're working on. So, okay, I do have to say drones. I did look up a little bit about drones. So they're being used. There's still a lot of I didn't have time to do the deep research. There's still the language around we're testing and it's going to be in all of these locations, right? Well, you said that 6 months ago. So I'm no longer feeling like this is a done deal. But the delivery, Walmart is a big one. They're testing in Texas, delivering within 30 minutes, delivering pharmaceuticals through drone drops. So I'm always very curious. And I actually had diagrams of certain kinds of upfits on trucks that were, you stack all the drones on the truck and you drive it to a certain location, and then the drones all go and deliver everything. So maybe I'm just a little read too much science fiction when I was younger,
No,
but
no, I
but we're
don't.
seeing a lot of those things,
Yeah,
Jameel.
I don't think they're no longer really fringe ideas. I mean, they're showing real pilot activity, right? I mean, so whenever you think about um, you know, delivery, last mile delivery, point to point deliveries or point to point use cases, you're starting to see a lot of different mobility services that are being piloted and could potentially be the technology that delivers those applications into the future.
I just see a question from Alexis about what score are we assigning to FCEVs today? That's a great question because I'm not sure how to do that. I think we could guess though. I think we could make our own educated guess. Um, I think, and if we're talking about score, I think we're talking less about this type. Yeah, let's use this one. I would give it a 25. I'm feeling it that without the infrastructure actually kicking in and some really forward strides on that, like you were saying, Jameel, some big
Mhm.
bets on
Yeah.
it, that
Yeah. I
I
mean,
really worry about that.
yeah, I think if it was, sort of part of this scoring system, I think it would be pretty low, maybe single digits, just because of the fact that it's only, it's less than 2% of the powertrains today. So I think, today it's certainly still emerging, but with public-private partnerships and other sort of infrastructure assistance, yeah, it could get to approaching mainstream in the next decade.
I guess mine's powered by hope. Um, we've been asked to talk a little bit about blockchain, right? And of course, we were talking about that and trying to figure out what we would say about blockchain. What do you think, Jameel?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's a way to bring everything together and trusted sort of technology, you know, visible, trusted, transparent technology. That's sort of the underpinnings of it. I think that practical applications of it are still emerging. So to me, it's just what tool in your toolkit is the right type of technology to build your application. And then once you have that application, if you're solving a problem for your clients or for the commercial vehicle industry, that it will become adopted. So to me, that's just more of like a backbone technology that helps.
That's a great thing to talk about. And actually, AI is a good example, maybe, of the blockchain is taking longer to become uh, lots of valid use cases. But if you think about how AI was maybe a couple of years ago, that would have been the same thing. It's like, well, it's a thing. How are you going to use it? Right. And now there's a lot more use cases for AI. We're of course reading about it every day, right? Including all sorts of back to my science fiction reading days. My recent video that I watched was um, the Kung Fu robot, right? I don't know if you've seen the Kung Fu robot yet, but it's pretty cool, right? And I think that use cases are the key. And we're going to talk about this again throughout the day, because when you stop and think about what's happening around us with removing of things like the incentives in the electric vehicle alt fuel space. I'm going to actually use this quote now. I forget when I was going to use it, but I'm going to use it now. Cox's Industry Insights recently said, with the $7,500 incentives eliminated, the case for EVs now rests on performance, technology, and total cost of ownership rather than subsidies. And to me, that's very exciting, because that's what business is. And by the way, that's what the commercial vehicle industry is all about. Show me the business case. Show me how it can enhance my business use. Show me how I can pay for it in X period of time. And of course, I'll consider it. And so I think that's really kind of where we are with now with AI, is that
Mhm.
show me, I mean, has it cut an hour out of my day because I don't have to rewrite a bunch of stuff? Has it taken, an hour out of my week because I no longer have to double check that everybody got the list of what needs to be done by person, and I can easily check that out? I mean, there's just so many things that are practical that I guess that's where we're not quite yet with blockchain, right? We know it's kind of this magical trusting thing, but there aren't a lot of specifics yet of applications.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and some of the commentary on AI, to me, it's no longer just this back end efficiency tool, which of course you described some of the benefits there, but it's really becoming more of a decision making core of fleet management. So from being able to help you better predict maintenance, to of course automating inspections, to really sort of connecting the vehicles and the data and your staff and your drivers into a real kind of management ecosystem. And
Mhm.
really, that's sort of what we're seeing now in the market. So not only does it still provide you those efficiencies that the technology has promised, since its inception, regardless of whether it's AI or not, but I think now you're really starting to see its value in the decision making of in this case, fleet management, merchandising, things like that.
Yeah, I should
Um,
have switched to this slide, shouldn't I have?
yeah, no, I think this is helps brings it to life a little bit. Of course, like commercial vehicle inspections and inspections in general is near and dear to my heart. But wanted to take a minute to just showcase that
Mhm.
these technologies that are AI enabled, they're not just in theory anymore, right? These are actually being deployed today across large and small fleet operations and
And
enable.
actually, you have one of the largest fleets under your care.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we have, um, the largest dealer group in America that uses us, the largest used car retailer in America, and then also, yeah, the largest e-commerce company, their last mile delivery vehicles. And so, really, when you think about, the promise of AI and what it can do for your business, really, I think and you made this point earlier, when you're looking to solve problems, whether it's, man, I really would like to get an understanding of the condition of my fleet, whenever I want, not just when I need to schedule a trained inspector to come out and it's costly and maybe it's subjective and prone to error. Well, now I can use technologies to do that, in a few minutes with photos whenever I want, really. And so, this is just an example of how AI is now translated to a very simple user experience that can
Mhm.
turn every driver, operator, or operator manager into what we call like fleet condition data contributor. But that's just a fancy way of saying they don't have to be a skilled inspector to get you that information
Right.
about your fleet. Yeah.
And you know what I think is so exciting about how technology builds opportunity is and thinking is that, you might think that and I'm talking to the general public because I know you already know this. You might think that it's important to inspect it to make sure it's operational, but think about all the other things about it, like how it looks when it's out there delivering things to people. I mean, the brand itself, how important it is for companies to be seen correctly out in market. And I don't know that people think about that very much, but I love that it because this is ongoing, like you said, this is real time ongoing. You can see, you can monitor. I like that word, monitor.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it just shows how you can, and there's many other use cases for AI and fleet, but like I think the good point that you made here is that maybe you have one specific problem you're looking to solve with an AI-enabled technology, but then by integrating it into your system, you
Hmm.
see many other opportunities. To your point,
Exactly.
branded vehicles, brand management,
Hmm.
that was not something that was on our radar for a use case, but clients um, seem to gravitate towards it. I mean, but when you think even more broadly about managing the condition of your vehicle, you have everything from, in-fleeting, defleeting to the vehicle safety checks to
Right.
merchandising, remarketing. So there's lots of opportunity where if you have these cost-efficient AI-enabled solutions, that you can sort of compound the benefits of
Correct.
these type of technologies,
Yeah.
and really sort of think about how you could use it throughout all the different steps in your fleet management life cycle where it makes sense.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff throughout the day. We're also, going to talk a little bit about connectivity, in general. It's called so many different things, connectivity, maybe I mean, mobility. There's so many of these words. There was a joke back and when I started my first company, it was multimedia was the hot word, and we called it the $0 billion industry because it was such a vague word that how would you know, right? So, what anyway? Connectivity, a $400 billion market for data services, whatever that means. But 2 terabytes of data a day, and software will be 50% of the total vehicle cost in 2030. It was 10% in 21 when we started the CVB Summit, and 90% of vehicle innovations will be implemented using software. And by the way, my first company was software and hardware. My company today is software. Hallelujah, because software is so much easier to gain value and to execute and help. So it's and 100% of vehicles in 35 will be connected, sold of those sold, not my beautiful old Mustang. But I could if I wanted to, I guess, right? I'm sure there'll be retros. So you want to talk a little bit about what drives connectivity, Jameel?
Yeah, yeah, sure, Catherine. And I really do think that this is the the real transformation in the next decade. It's really going from vehicles to these data platforms. As you mentioned,
Mhm.
um, every truck roll essentially going to become a rolling data center that comes off the line in less than 5 years. And I think the data economy that's going to be built around the $400 billion market as predicted, just creates huge opportunity for the different stakeholders in the commercial vehicle segment, from OEMs down. So really, I think what's going to matter, um, you know, to really sort of help drive this growth is shifting the product and service mix to really these more subscription-based models. And I think there's still some challenges there, understanding, how to do that, to shift from selling assets to selling intelligence on the OEM side. That's going to require a new commercial model, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about a fundamental change that to me, kind of from this idea of taking challenges and making progress, to me, the biggest fundamental change multiple people are going to talk about today and tomorrow is changing from, commodity selling to consultative. And where else would that be happening but in the commercial and in the commercial vehicle space? That's been, B2B is who we are. And to be able to master that and help those not just in the ecosystem, but surrounding the ecosystem in the retail space to really understand the power of that to lead into this. They're going to have to become good at that period, you know. And in fact, when you look at transition, when I was teaching marketing, there are 5 things that we don't have control over. As a company, we have control over the product, we have control over the price, we have control over how we get it to the customer, the place, and we have control over the promotion. And that's all we really have control over. The part we don't, the 5 things that we don't are called the environment, and it's called environmental scanning. And one of the 5 is the social environment. The others are regulatory, competition, the economic and situation, and technology. And so we don't talk a lot about the social environment very much and how that really affects opportunity and growth. But I thought this was really interesting because there are today talked a lot about the talent gaps that are happening, certainly in the vocational space. Like if I had a young son today, I might want to encourage him or daughter to encourage them to think about welding as a career. Welders make so much money and it's very creative. You can go anywhere in the world. There's so many things that unfortunately, when I was young, it was all focused on you need to go to college to get an education to be able to be successful. And that became such a big theme that vocational learning, those kinds of careers were denigrated. And that denigration has really served us badly. In fact, for those of you that are interested in this, Mike Rowe has a great association that is all focused around work ethic, number one, and number two, around helping folks get back into understanding that kind of workforce skill. And they give out, I don't remember, we promoted this on convoy.com, but I think it was millions of dollars worth of scholarships to help with that. But it needs to be elevated. People need to believe that that's important to our economy and our industry. I hear it at the National Truck Equipment Association meetings where they talk about not having enough people for the manufacturing of the specialty vehicles. So anyway, sorry, I know that's one of my hot buttons, so I'll pass it along to you now, Jameel.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you bring up a lot of good points, right? I'll just add, technology is moving faster than talent, right, in this space. And I think that, you know, the real disruption isn't just digital, it's also human. And so in addition to some of the, workforce transitions and skills that you mentioned on the manufacturing side, um, you know, a lot of the skills that sort of built, this industry, mechanical, logistical, they're evolving into more software, data, and systems roles as well. So those are going to be jobs that also will help support the growth of the commercial vehicle market that will need to reskill at scale, in my opinion. And so, you know, there's a lot of new demands and new roles that are going to help support the growth of this industry. And the message is certainly, they may not be traditional, roles, traditional fleet roles, but if you think about fleet, but it's really forcing organizations to rethink training and recruitment. So
Yep.
that's not going to stop, in my opinion. It's going to only accelerate.
And, everybody that's in this space has certainly heard about the plight of truck drivers and the fact that we don't have enough and that we certainly want them to be safe drivers. And that kind of, allows us to talk a little bit before we close out. We didn't include a whole autonomous section here, but there is some things about autonomy in the appendix if you download the deck. And I think that I'm very heartened. I was in Phoenix a week ago. I had my first Waymo experience. And although the beginning and the end of it were weird, like the first one I couldn't get into, even though I could turn the light, the color light with my initial on it, on and off with my Bluetooth, I couldn't get in. And when it dropped me off at the wrong terminal, the right gate, but the wrong terminal. Having said all that, the journey itself was phenomenal. It was such an experience. It was quiet and clean and smelled good, and it was well executed. And I really fell in love with this concept of the practicality and the use case of autonomy. And, I live in California, and even though I'm in a smaller area, there's a lot of traffic and a lot of traffic by folks that aren't very good drivers. And so I think that there's a lot of not so far away opportunity with driving as becoming something different. I'll just say it that way, like you don't actually have to do the driving. Maybe you have to somebody has to be in the vehicle, maybe to do certain things, but the function and the accuracy and not being tired and not, crossing over the line and, all the bad things that happen then, right? Well, I am so grateful that you joined me today, Jameel.
Of course.